We're live.
We're live. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. It is 10:02 on Monday, April 3rd, 2023. And it's my pleasure to call to order the Policy and Innovation Committee of SACOG. So all the directors and staff, thank you for being here. Welcome. And Robert, if you'd like to do the initial
Sure, I'll do the housekeeping announcements.
housekeeping announcements. Perfect.
Good morning, everyone. This meeting is being recorded and streamed over the internet. For members of the public viewing this meeting online, we accept and encourage public comment and have provided options that are listed at the top of this meeting agenda. For our committee members, thank you for joining us today. Please mute your devices when you're not speaking and use the raise hand feature in Zoom should you wish to comment. Chair Thomas, would you like to go to the pledge or to roll call?
Let's do roll call, then let's do the pledge.
Okay. Okay, directors, when I call your name, please indicate your presence. Director Desmond.
Here.
Dowden Calvillo. Absent. Houdeschelt. Absent. Zaragoza.
Here.
Schaefer.
Here.
Stollard. Absent. Vang. Absent. Villegas.
Present.
Vice Chair Burris.
Present.
And Chair Thomas.
Present.
All right,
Wonderful.
we have a
Thank you,
quorum.
Robert.
Yeah.
And if you would now rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll now move on to public communications. Do we have any, Robert?
Let me check the screen here. There is no public comment at this time.
All right, thank you. And consent calendar. Does anyone have any changes to the consent calendar or the agenda?
Zaragoza moves the consent calendar.
Desmond seconds.
Perfect. We have a motion and a second. Any public comments on the consent calendar, Robert?
There's no public comment.
All right, let's go to a roll call, please.
Okay, directors, when I call your name, please indicate your vote. Director Desmond.
Aye.
Dowden Calvillo. Absent. Houdeschelt. Absent. Zaragoza.
Aye.
Schaefer.
Aye.
Stollard. Absent. Vang. Absent. Villegas.
Yes.
Vice Chair Burris.
Yes.
And Chair Thomas.
Aye,
Motion carries.
thank you so much. We now move into the action portion of our morning. Item number 4 is to approve Amendment 3 to the budget and overall work program for fiscal year 2022-23. Loretta, I believe you're up. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair, and good morning, directors. Loretta Sue, Finance Directors at SACOG. The purpose of this amendment number 3 to the budget and OWP for fiscal year 2022-23 is mainly to reflect the increase in allocation of federal core planning funds of approximately $297,000, and also the Transportation Demand Act planning and administration fees from the 4 counties of $480,000. And also reflected a one-time revenue related to the SACOG Managed Fund loan repayment of $2.2 million and the FTA Race Grant Award of $5 million, but only $139,000 is reflected in fiscal year 2022-23 budgets. As a result of the increase in revenues, this amendment number 3 to the budgets does not require the use of the fund balance of $640,000 and the SACOG managed funds for community design program of $1.2 million, which was included in the adopted budgets. This amendment number 3 resulted in a net increase of SACOG managed funds of $1.3 million, and then a net saving of $1.2 million in unassigned fund balance, which in combination of saving for not using the fund balance that was in the adopted budgets and also the increase in revenue. Staff is bringing forward a recommendation on how to allocate the excess funds to assigned fund balance in the draft budget for fiscal year 2022-23-24, which you will hear more in item number 5. The amendment number 3 also adjusting the Green Means Go revenue and expenditures of approximately 5 million to better align the budget to the actual expenditures. The program is underway. HCD has approved SACOG application, and then the board has took actions to award over 34 million in projects in the 3 categories: early activations, planning, and capital. The budget amendment number 3 also includes the reallocation of staff hours between projects to reflect actual workload and then also anticipated employee utilizations for the remaining fiscal year, and also adjustment to the vacant positions. The amendment number 3 to the fiscal year 2022-23 budget and OWP reflects a total revenue of 35.7 million, a net decrease of 4.1 million compared to the amendment number 2 for the reason I noted earlier. And also just want to note it that there is a typo in paragraph 2 under section 4, discussion and analysis, that the decrease in revenue is to compare to amendment number 2, not amendment number 3. So I apologize for the confusion and the error there. As a result of the revenue adjustment, the expenditures, mainly the consulting and pass-through costs, are also adjusted. For more information, please refer to the attachments. Attachment A shows the changes in the overall revenue by funding source comparing to budget amendment number 2. Attachment C, D, E, and E provide summary of revenue and expenditures included in the amendment number 3. Also, attachment F and G provide a summary of changes comparing to the adopted budget in the combined budget and the board and advocacy budgets for the fiscal year. This amendment number 3 to the budget and OWP for fiscal year 2022-23 is resulting in a net increase in SACOG managed fund of 1.3 million and unassigned fund balance of 600,000. Staff is recommending that the board and policy committees recommend the board to approve amendment number 3 to the budgets and authorize staff to submit all required documents to Caltrans and federal agency. This concludes the presentation. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Loretta, for walking us through that. And I'd like to welcome Director Dowden Cavillo. Thank you for joining us this morning. And at this point, does any director have any questions for Loretta? Okay, I'm not seeing any. Robert, are there any questions online?
There is no public comment.
All right, great. I will bring it back to the board for action.
Zaragoza, I'll move.
Schaefer, I'll second.
We got Schaefer second, I heard. All right. So roll call, please.
Give me one moment. I think Director Havashelt is actually out in the attendee list. Director Havashelt, if you could
Right.
raise your hand so that I can unmute you. I think you may be this phone number. You can hit *9 to raise your hand if you're participating telephonically. Want to include you in this vote if possible. Okay, not seeing anything. Okay, directors, when I call your name, please indicate your vote for item 4. Director Desmond.
Aye.
Dowden Calvillo.
Aye.
Havashelt. Absent. Zaragoza.
Aye.
Schaefer.
Aye.
Stollard. Absent. Bang. Absent. Villegas.
Aye.
Vice Chair Burris. Vice Chair Burris, if you could indicate your vote.
Sorry, I got stuck on mute there. My answer is yes. Thank you.
No worries. And Chair Thomas.
Aye.
Motion carries.
And there's Director Havashelt. Good morning. Okay, great. We're now going to move on to item number 5, approve the draft budget and overall work program for fiscal year 2023-2024. So Loretta.
Thank you. Give me just 1 minute to share my
Absolutely.
screen here.
You're getting a workout this morning.
Yes. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, great. Let's see. Oops. One minute here. Sorry, for some reason it's not. Oops, sorry.
No problem.
Moving too fast here. Okay, thank you. Good morning again. This is Loretta Stu, SACOG Finance Director. This morning, staff is pleased to present a draft budget and overall work program for fiscal year 2023-24 for board consideration and release for public comments. SACOG, as a metropolitan planning organization, is required to develop an overall work program and budget annually. The overall work program, going forward, I'm just going to say OWP, since there's a lot of acronyms in here, describe the continuing comprehensive and coordinated metropolitan planning process for the 6 county Sacramento regions. The OWP includes transportation, air quality, and other regional planning activities, and also serve as the primary reference for SACOG budget and work activity for the fiscal year, and also serve as a grant agreement between SACOG and Caltrans. The OWP is mainly funded through a combination of formula-based federal and state revenue source, supplemented by short-term discretionary and non-discretionary grants and contract funds. Staff has submitted an administrative draft of the OWP and budgets to Caltrans and federal agency on March 1st for a preliminary review of the major work elements and to ensure that SACOG planning activities are consistent with the amount and purpose of the funding source supporting the work program. Attachment J is the draft OWP document, and it is also available on SACOG website by clicking the link included in the staff item. The staff is seeking board approval to release the draft for public comments at the April board meeting. The OWP projects includes transportation, air quality, and other planning activities. That includes core planning activity for SACOG as a metropolitan planning organizations, projects that support the 6 county Sacramento regions. It also supports SACOG's strategic plan with the triple bottom line principle, equity, economy, and environment. And it also implements SACOG 2023 work plan priorities. Some of these projects include blueprints, racial equity action plan, funding round working group, trail implementations, mobility zone, Green Means Go, and race and equity inclusion initiative. Here's a quick overview of the budgets. Total revenues is anticipated to be $36.5 million, and also including the user fund balance of $1.4 million. As noted earlier, that's in the fiscal year 2022-23 budget anticipated a surplus approximately $600,000 in unassigned fund balance. So staff is recommending using $400,000 of the unassigned balance to for the fiscal year 23-24 budgets. It also including a TDA carryover for committed cash match on grants and ongoing project and activities, especially those that are for multi-year projects. The additional $200,000 that is in the surplus from the fiscal year 22-23 budget, staff is proposing assign that to the contingency fund balance, which allows the executive director to direct these funds to swap out or to pay for multi-year projects like the green, the blueprints, mobility zone, and some other projects there. Also included the unassigned fund balance. Fund balance is $460,000 of reserve fund balance, of which $350,000 is related to the SACOG managed fund community design projects that it's going to be included in the budgets. Total expenditure is anticipated to be 37.9 million, which includes about 16 million related to staff and operating costs, over 16 million or 15 million of regional projects and pass-through costs. This is mainly due to the REAP housing program and also Green Means Go funding. These are one-time fundings to SACOG that will pass to member jurisdictions. And also consulting and other costs of 6.2 million. Here's just a quick overview of the combined revenue summary for fiscal year 23-24 budgets. Total budget it's 36.5 million in revenue, which makes up 34% of federal funds revenues, 44% of state revenue. This is mainly the Green Means Go and then also the REAP housing program, as I mentioned earlier. Local is about 16% of the budgets, and other revenue is about 6%. Total increase in revenue for the fiscal year is 822,000. Approximately 1.8 million is resulted from the federal revenue source, which is mainly the RACE grant, and then offset by the local funds revenue, which is a one-time increase of revenue for the SACOG management in fiscal year 22-23. Here's another overview of the revenue at the OWP budget level. Core planning activity is approximately 16.4 million. Regional programs is about 16 million, and then also discretionary grants is about 4 million. Total increase for the fiscal year is approximately 1.8 million. As I noted earlier, total increase is mainly due to the RACE grant and then also the one-time funding for the Green Means Go program that is underway right now. Here's just a quick overview of the budget's expenditure summary. Total expenditures for the fiscal year, it's 37.9 million comparing to 33.9 million in fiscal year 22-23, which resulted in an increase of 4 million. Staff and fringe cost is approximately 37%, an increase of a little bit over $1 million. This is mainly due to the increase in COLA increase, also vacant position in the current fiscal year, and additional new positions to support the ongoing work like the Blueprint, Racial Equity Action Plan implementation, and the RACE grant. Consulting and pass-through costs makes up 52% of the total budgets, which is an increase of 2.6 million. This is mainly due to the REAP housing program and Green Means Go. Indirect and other costs make up the remaining 11% of the budgets. For more information, please refer to Attachment B, which is a summary of revenue and expenditures. Attachment E is the expenditure by project. And Attachment F provides a summary of revenue and expenditures and estimated fund balance for the Planning and Administration Fund. Here's just a quick overview of the board and advocacy budgets. Total budget is approximately 1.1 million. Salary and benefits is approximately 36%. This includes staff support, technical assistant to member agency. Consulting costs is about 18%, which is mainly federal and state advocacy work. Meeting and travel expenses is about 19%. This includes board meeting expenses and also travel expenses like the cap-to-cap visit and then future forum program and also any peer regions visit. Board expenses is approximately 5% of the budgets. Indirect and other costs is the remaining 22% of the budgets. Attachment H is a summary of the draft board and advocacy budgets. Next step. As noted earlier, staff submitted draft budget and OWP to Caltrans and federal agencies for review and comment back in March. Staff received comments back from Caltrans and federal agency last week. No financial impact to the budget, just follow up on some clarification on descriptions, timeline, and also deliverables. Staff is seeking board approval to release the draft budget for public comments at the April meeting. Based on comments received from Caltrans, federal agency, and other comments received during the public review period, staff will prepare a final draft budget and OWP for board adoption in May and submit for federal and agency approval to begin incurring expenditures starting July 1st, 2023. This concludes the presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Loretta. And boy, this budget represents a tremendous scope of work. And while this is routine, this is something that we do every year. It's important that we don't lose sight of how important this coordinated approach is to regional planning. So at this point, do any directors have any comments or questions? I'm not seeing any. Robert, are there any public comments?
There's no public comment.
All right, I'll bring this back to the committee for a motion.
Burris moves approval.
Dowden Calvillo will second.
All right, thank you. Roll call, please, Robert.
All right, directors, when I call your name, please indicate your vote. Director Desmond,
Aye.
Dowden Calvillo,
Aye.
Howdeshelt,
Thumbs up, I got. Oops, Robert, you're muted.
I hit the space bar on my computer. Thank
No
you.
problem.
Yes, so Saragosa, Schaefer,
Aye.
Stollard, absent. Vang, absent. Villegas,
Yes.
Vice Chair Burris,
Yes.
and Chair Thomas.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Loretta. Appreciated the presentations. We now move into an information item on advocacy update. Good morning, Christina.
Good morning, thank you. Excuse me. I'm going to give a quick update on federal advocacy activities, and then Chris Lee with Politico Group, our state lobbyist, will provide an update on our sponsored bill, AB 350, as well as other state advocacy activity that's been happening since, mainly since our board meeting, since we got a good update then.
Great.
So on the federal side in DC, our federal lobbyists are focused on potential funding opportunities for Green Means Go. We've had a number of meetings with a variety of potential federal partners, the most recent being the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA. We're also working with our congressional delegation to support funding for a regional pilot program throughout the country, but that Green Means Go could be a model for, and doing that through the annual appropriations process. Also, last month, the president released his proposed budget. This included a request of $108.5 billion for the Department of Transportation. This is in addition to the $36 billion that was included in the bipartisan infrastructure law. So now Congress begins the appropriations process to determine the final federal budget. The new fiscal year starts October 1st, but if past years or any indication of now history and what to expect, probably will not see a final budget until well after that deadline. Lastly, on the federal side, we are also continuing to track federal infrastructure grants that are rolling out from the bipartisan infrastructure law, as well as the Inflation Reduction Act. We are communicating these out to our member agencies and partners via our grants email listserv. Our aim is to help the region coordinate on these applications so that we can bring in more money to the region. So please share with us if your jurisdiction is thinking about applying for a grant, and we can help facilitate that through a variety of different ways. So that's it on the federal update for me. I'll pause to see if there's any questions, and then we can pass it over to Chris Lee for the state update.
Do any directors have any comments or questions for Christina? I do have one. Christina, can you tell me just a little more about the opportunity for a broader model for Green Means Go? What did you mean by that?
So we're looking at trying to get some funding in the appropriations bill that would fund a set number of pilots throughout the country, pilot programs. We are working on what that language is, but the idea would be that Green Means Go could be one of those pilots. So we're working to identify some potential partners and colleagues throughout the country that could then also support that, to try to get bipartisan support from around the country to get something put into the appropriations bill. So, something along the lines of $200-300 million for 10 pilot programs, trying to write it pretty broad, but something that essentially then Green Means Go could be one of those pilots.
Okay, so, and Green Means Go pilot projects across the country is what you're saying.
Essentially, I mean, it would probably could look different depending on, what the other regions' needs are, how they would fund it, but it would be something that Green Means Go would be eligible to be one of the pilots for.
Oh, I see. All right. Thank you so much. Great.
Yeah, it was a good idea of our federal lobbyists, the idea, just trying to find ways we can fund and find more funding for Green Means Go.
All right. Thank you for that clarification. All right. Well, good morning, Chris. What do you have for us today?
Good morning. Have some slides to share, so I'm gonna try to share my screen and see if I can do that. All right. Great. Can everybody see that?
Yes.
Excellent. Good morning. So Chris Lee with Politico Group, SACOG state lobbyist, and here's a brief outline of what I'm going to cover today. So next steps on SACOG sponsored bill, AB 350. I'm going to talk a little bit about Green Means Go being highlighted at the Senate Governance and Finance Committee hearing on local infrastructure needs recently, and then going to walk through 3 key bills on open meetings laws and remote meeting. So taking the first item, AB 350, so passed out of the Assembly Transportation Committee unanimously on March 13th. The committee had, the bill had originally been referred to both the Transportation Committee and the Natural Resources Committee. Immediately after the Transportation Committee hearing, we got to work with the consultant in the Natural Resources Committee and negotiated a technical amendment related to the applicability of the California Environmental Quality Act to the interim Metropolitan Transportation Plan that SACOG will be adopting in 2023. We took that amendment last week on March 30th. It's across the desk, and it's our understanding, based on the agreement with Natural Resources, that they're going to rescind their committee hearing and then we'll be in the Appropriations Committee. One of the commitments we made in the Transportation Committee with the Policy Committee chair was that we'd have ongoing conversations with the Air Resources Board, sort of about reporting, just providing some comfort that through this extended period, we're really going to show some benefit for the ongoing implementation of the Sustainable Community Strategy in the SACOG region. So looking at models for previous legislation, SANDAG had a similar bill to this, AB 1730, a few years ago, and using that as kind of a model to see what sort of guardrails would make CARB comfortable with this extension. So the upcoming deadlines that are relevant for us here, April 28th is the last day for policy committees to hear fiscal bills. We are well ahead of schedule because we should be done with policy committee once that second hearing is waived. And then the Appropriations Committee has a May 19th deadline for hearing fiscal bills introduced in the Assembly this year. So those will be our next committee dates. And I'll pause briefly, see if there are any questions about this before we move on to the other topics.
Director Zaragoza.
Thank you, Chair. Chris, from CARB staff, have we had anything, but I mean, are they looking mostly at technical sort of guardrails, if you will? There's not anything more substantive than, I would say, clarifications, or is it more substantive type of questions we're getting right now on the legislation?
I think it's more technical and, just reporting, things like that. So that's going to be kind of the overarching conversation, is just, showing what's the value of supporting state policies on implementation of sustainable community strategies that are going to be unlocked by all the things that SACOG wants to do in the blueprint update.
Got you. And then have the other our greater region MPOs, have they sent letters of support in yet?
San Joaquin Council of Governments submitted a letter in advance of Assembly Transportation. I know that MTC had it on their agenda last month. I don't think I've seen the letter yet, but we'll follow up and make sure that. But the staff recommendation at MTC was to submit a support letter.
Great. Awesome. Thank you, Chris.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Chris? All right, perfect. Thank you.
Great. Moving on, we worked with the Senate Governance and Finance Committee, actually after the agenda was out, to add SACOG to a hearing that was really looking at what is the gap in constructing local infrastructure. And so mostly the panels were focused on state perspectives from HCD and city and county, talking about individual public works projects. So SACOG was the only regional voice that was included in that conversation. Deputy Executive Director Luzon did a great job presenting SACOG's work in Green Means Go, looking at how infrastructure limitations are related to the broader regional plan and the need to really shift infill-centered growth in the SACOG region. So after the hearing, we had some additional discussion with HCD staff looking at the infill infrastructure grant guidelines. Committee members were interested in seeing those comments. So we've also shared that with the committee staff and Senator Caballero's personal staff. We also highlighted for all the committee members what SACOG had used REAP 2.0 funding for locally, and then pointed them to the examples in their own regions for these members from around the state. Finally, we've started to ask some questions about how Green Means Go and this broader sort of infrastructure supporting housing conversation can inform the ongoing conversations about climate and infrastructure bonds. So it was a great opportunity to highlight the work you're doing locally, make sure that a statewide audience is aware of it and the value of those sorts of investments. And then finally today, I will do a quick update on 3 key bills related to the Brown Act, AB 557 by Hart, AB 817 by Pacheco, and SB 537 by Becker. So this first bill is by an assembly member from Santa Barbara, sponsored by the California Special Districts Association, CSAC, League of Cities. Basically, this just extends the sunset in AB 361 by Rivas, which authorizes remote meetings during state declared emergencies. Keeps that on the books permanently. And then a brief technical change extends the renewal period for the findings that you have to make in your local meeting from every 30 days to every 45 days. So makes that a little bit easier to administer, but provides that flexibility during an emergency. AB 817 by Pacheco is a little bit further reaching. This is sponsored by the Association of Recreation and Park Districts and the League of California Cities. And this is basically a permanent authorization for boards, commissions, and subcommittees that are not legislative bodies, basically advisory committees. So for instance, this committee to meet remotely going forward, take testimony, and then have the members of the committees meet remotely. And then finally, I would say this is the farthest reaching bill and perhaps the one that might face the biggest hurdles in getting approved by the legislature. But this is SB 537 by Senator Becker from Menlo Park in the Bay Area. It's sponsored by Peninsula Clean Energy, which is a community choice aggregator, power purchasing interjurisdictional group in the Bay Area. And so this allows appointed boards, commissions, or advisory bodies of multi-jurisdictional agencies. And in the bill, it's defined as coming from various cities, various counties to meet remotely. And so we're taking a look at this with SACOG staff. There is an interesting requirement in there requiring the agency to post a record of attendance. And I believe that it even extends to members of the public that attend on the website within 7 days of a meeting. So this is one where obviously this is the most flexibility being offered by the legislation that we've seen introduced. but based on Brown Act bills that we've seen in prior sessions, especially in the Assembly Local Government Committee, we expect that this one might be a bigger lift. I think there's some reluctance to allow decision-making bodies to have these remote meetings, notwithstanding sort of I think everyone recognizes that, especially for multi-jurisdictional agencies, in-person attendance can require, a lot of logistics and driving. And so this is one that we're reviewing closely with your staff, and we'll see about submitting support letters on this as well as the other Brown Act bills. So that's what we'd prepared for you today. My contact information is there as always, and happy to take any questions about the legislative update.
Thank you so much, Chris. Do any other directors have any additional questions for Chris? Director Zaragoza.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chris, are the concerns on the Becker legislation in terms of, online, or as we're doing today, is it the concern of there's not the same level of participation? I mean, at least since COVID, my experience has been that online has brought a lot more people to the tables, if you will, than, trying to get people to go in person to meetings.
Yeah, I think there's just a sense of accessibility and, wanting that to happen in an in-person forum. So I wasn't very involved in the prior session bills. It wasn't my area that I worked in on CSAC, but there were some pretty far-reaching bills that stalled in committee last session, and the same concerns I think are going to be raised by the committee on this one. So I can work and get you some more feedback on that, but I'm much more optimistic about the emergency authorization and then the advisory committee. I think it's probably worth weighing in support of Senator Becker's efforts, especially as we kind of work through some of those technical pieces there, but just wanted to sort of set expectations that there have been concerns in the legislature about moving to, virtual meeting forums.
Understood.
And I'll just add, it's my understanding that a lot of this is coming from the position of the chairs of the committees that would be lead, and that their perspective has not necessarily changed since COVID and the experience we've had with COVID. And so that's perhaps part of where the roadblocks are coming from.
Understood. And yeah, I mean, believe me, as someone that works across the street as well, it's, as we all know, it didn't go very swimmingly on a lot of these hearings. And then also time, putting time certain, 30 minutes of testimony, what have you. A lot of people did get cut off as well, and never actually got to, enter their yay or nay on a piece of legislation.
All right, thank you. So Chris, you were saying that AB 817 is potentially gaining legs and support.
I think the folks that have been really sort of entrenched in this debate over the last few years are optimistic that that is a vehicle that kind of hits the sweet spot in terms of addressing committee concerns while also giving advisory bodies more flexibility. So I'm just much more optimistic about that one.
So are we saying that SACOG, as well as maybe our respective jurisdictions, should weigh in letters of support for that, to consider that?
Yeah, I'll let Christina talk about the process for
Okay.
SACOG getting into support, but I know the League of Cities and CSAC and others will be pushing for their members to engage.
Perfect, thank you, Chris. All right, Christina, do you have any further comments on that?
I was just going to add that, yeah, we've been, focused primarily on AB 350 and moving that through the process, our sponsored bill. And now we're taking an opportunity to look at the other legislation, and we'll be weighing in per our advocacy principles and procedures. And the bills do fit within our advocacy policy priorities.
All right, and it is good news about AB 350. That's great. All right. Good morning, Director Stallard. Nice to see you.
Thank you. I apologize. I lost track of time.
Oh, it happens, no problem. But actually, yeah, timing is good. That concludes our agenda for the day. Are there any further director comments? All right, not seeing.
there are other matters, I wanted to just highlight to all the directors that we're going to be on again for our board meeting. But this time it'll be a different location. We'll be in Roseville on the 20th. So look for information. We're looking forward to coming out to your jurisdiction, Director Haudeshelt. And so look for information from Lynette on parking and all that information. So hope to see you in about 17 days there.
Perfect. Thank you, Eric, for that reminder. And we look forward to the field trip, SACOG field trip to Roseville. That will be, I love that model.
You can take the train if you want.
There you go. Fabulous. All right. Well, with that, we are adjourned, and the next meeting of this committee will be held on Monday, May 8th. So thank you all for being with us this morning. We appreciate it. And we'll see you at SACOG, the board meeting. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.